The weight of solitude pressed against my chest as I walked through my half-empty house, footsteps echoing off walls that once held family photos. 2 months after finalizing the divorce, the crushing reality of single motherhood and mounting debt had forced me to make a decision I never imagined, opening my home to a stranger. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, listening to the quiet sounds of my children sleeping above. Sophie and Marcus, just 8 and 10, had weathered the divorce better than I expected, but the financial strain was becoming unbearable. The mortgage payment loomed like a shadow, growing darker with each passing day. My ex-husband's sporadic child support barely covered groceries, let alone the mountain of legal fees he'd left in his wake. The doorbell's chime shattered the evening silence. I smoothed my hair, straightened my blouse, and opened the door to meet my potential tenant. The man standing on my porch wasn't what I expected. Liam Connor, 26, a graduate student in architecture, looked more like he belonged in a fashion magazine than a rental listing. His warm smile and earnest green eyes immediately put me at ease, though something in his gaze made my breath catch. "Mrs. Mitchell?" "I'm Liam," we spoke on the phone about the room. His voice carried a slight Irish lilt that softened his words. "I brought my references and deposit, if you're still interested." I was more than interested, I was desperate. But I maintained my composure as I invited him in, watching as he took in the house with appreciation. "The room's upstairs, but we should discuss terms first," I said, leading him to the kitchen where I'd prepared coffee and paperwork. Over the next hour, Liam proved himself to be everything I needed in a tenant: employed, responsible, and seemingly genuine. He spoke about his studies with passion, shared stories about his family back in Ireland, and asked thoughtful questions about house rules and boundaries. When he mentioned his experience with kids, he'd worked as a summer camp counselor, I felt the last of my reservations beginning to fade. "I understand your concerns," he said, those green eyes holding mine. "A single mom taking in a male tenant, it's not a traditional arrangement. But I promise you, Mrs. Mitchell Anna," I corrected, surprising myself. "Anna," he smiled, and something warm unfurled in my chest. "I promise you won't regret this decision." I signed the rental agreement that evening, telling myself it was purely financial necessity. But as I watched Liam carry his bags up to what would be his room, I couldn't ignore the spark of excitement that had nothing to do with paying bills. Life settled into an unexpected rhythm over the next few weeks. Liam proved to be more than just a reliable tenant, he became an integral part of our household. He fixed the leaky faucet that had been driving me crazy, helped Marcus with his math homework, and even taught Sophie how to make proper Irish soda bread. His presence filled the house with a warmth I hadn't realized was missing. Then James entered the picture. I met him at a parent-teacher conference of all places. He was there representing his nephew's family. Successful, charming, and immediately interested, James swept into my life like a whirlwind. Our first date turned into a second, then a third, and suddenly I found myself in a relationship I hadn't been looking for. But from the start, there was tension between James and Liam. They were cordial enough when they crossed paths, but I caught the way James's jaw would tighten when he saw Liam helping around the house, the way his hand would possessively find my waist. Liam, for his part, became more reserved when James was around, his usual warmth dimming to cool politeness. "I just don't understand why he needs to be so involved," James said one evening after Liam had helped me prepare dinner, something that had become our routine before James started coming over regularly. "He's a tenant, not a member of the family." "He's being helpful," I defended, though something in James's tone made me question my own judgment. "It's nice having someone around who can fix things, help with the kids. That's what I'm here for now," James cut in, pulling me close. "You don't need him anymore." But as I melted into James's embrace, I caught sight of Liam through the kitchen window, playing basketball with Marcus in the driveway. The sound of my son's laughter drifted through the glass, and for the first time, I wondered if I was navigating these new relationships all wrong. That night, I lay awake listening to the quiet creaks of the house, feeling the presence of both men under my roof, James in my bed, Liam down the hall. The complexity of my situation began to weigh on me, a tangled web of emotions I wasn't ready to unravel. What I didn't know then was that these were the last moments of peace I would have for a long time. Because tomorrow, I would witness something that would shatter my carefully reconstructed world all over again. The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the granite countertop where I traced my finger along the rim of my coffee cup. James had left early for work, his lingering kiss still burning on my lips, but something felt off, a discordant note in an otherwise perfect symphony. Perhaps it was the way he'd checked his phone 3 times during breakfast, or how his goodbye seemed rushed, rehearsed. I'd become attuned to these subtle shifts in behavior, my divorce having honed my instincts into razor-sharp instruments of self-preservation. The kids were at school, the house quiet except for the occasional creaks from upstairs where Liam was working on his thesis. This new normal should have felt comfortable, safe. Instead, anxiety crawled beneath my skin like a swarm of restless insects. The sound of raised voices shattered my contemplation. Male voices, angry and urgent, drifting down from the second floor. I rose from my chair, drawn toward the conflict like a moth to flame, my bare feet silent against the hardwood floors. As I ascended the stairs, the words became clearer, each sentence a dagger thrown in the narrow hallway. "You need to back off," James's voice, tight with barely contained rage. "This isn't your business." "Someone needs to make it their business," Liam shot back, his Irish accent thickening with emotion. "You can't keep living this double life. She deserves to know dash." "Know what?" I stepped into view, my heart thundering against my ribs. Both men whirled to face me, their expressions a study in contrasts, James's face draining of color, Liam's flushing with righteous anger. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band ready to snap. James recovered first, his features smoothing into the confident mask I'd grown to trust. "Anna, sweetheart, I came back to surprise you for lunch. Found your tenant here being inappropriate, making wild accusations dash." "Wild accusations?" Liam's laugh was bitter, cutting. "Tell her about Rachel, then. Tell her about the lunch dates at Bella Luna, the late-night meetings that never make it into your calendar." The name hit me like a physical blow. Rachel. James's new client, the interior designer he'd mentioned in passing. The one he'd been spending so much time with on that downtown renovation project. I watched James's face, searching for denial, for outrage, for anything that would dispel the acid eating through my chest. "He's lying," James said smoothly, stepping toward me. "He's jealous, Anna. Can't you see it? Living here, playing house with you and the kids, he's created this fantasy where he's part of your family. Now he's trying to destroy what we have." My eyes found Liam's, searching for truth in those green depths. The raw honesty I found there made me waver. "I saw them together," he said quietly. "Tuesday afternoon, when I was meeting my study group downtown. They didn't see me, but I saw everything. The way he touched her arm, how she leaned into him. It wasn't professional, Anna. You know in your gut it wasn't." James's hand found my shoulder, warm and familiar. "Baby, you can't seriously be listening to this. Rachel is a colleague, nothing more. Your tenant is overstepping, making assumptions about things he doesn't understand. I love you. You know that." The words should have reassured me, but they felt hollow, rehearsed, like his goodbye this morning. I shrugged off his touch, needing space to think. "You should go," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Both of you. I need time to process this." Anna dash, they spoke in unison, then glared at each other. "Go," I repeated, steel entering my tone. "Now." I watched them retreat, James down the stairs, Liam to his room. Only when I heard the front door close and Liam's lock click did I allow myself to slide down the wall, my legs giving out beneath me. Memories flickered through my mind like an old film reel, James canceling our dinner plans last week, the mysterious text messages he'd shield from my view, the lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on his collar. The worst part wasn't the possibility of betrayal, it was the familiar taste of it on my tongue. I'd been here before, with my ex-husband, choosing blindness over truth until reality came crashing down. Now, sitting on the floor of my hallway, I felt the walls I'd carefully rebuilt beginning to crack. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from James. "Don't let him poison what we have. Come to my place tonight. Let me explain everything." Another buzz, "Liam. I'm sorry you found out this way. But you deserve the truth. Whatever you decide, I've got your back." Two messages, two men, two versions of reality. As I stared at my phone, a third message appeared, from my friend Claire, who worked at the architectural firm where James claimed to be spending his afternoons. "Hey, haven't seen James around the office much lately. Everything okay with you too?" The pieces began falling into place, a mosaic of deception taking shape before my eyes. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't alone in my suspicions, and I wasn't the same woman who had once accepted lies wrapped in pretty promises. This time, I had a choice to make, and the strength to face whatever truth lay at the end of this path. I pulled myself to my feet, determination replacing despair. If James thought he could play me for a fool, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The game was changing, and this time, I intended to write the rules. Doubt is an insidious companion. It seeps through the cracks of certainty like black ink through water, staining everything it touches. In the days following the confrontation, I found myself analyzing every interaction, every gesture, every word spoken between James and me, searching for the thread that would unravel this tapestry of lies, or truth, depending on whose version I chose to believe. James had become more attentive than ever, his presence in our lives increasingly constant. He brought expensive gifts for the children, showed up with gourmet dinners, and called multiple times throughout the day. To an outside observer, he was the picture of devotion. But there was something performative in his attention, like an actor who had studied his role too carefully. "You're overthinking this," he told me one evening as we sat on my back porch, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. His hand rested possessively on my knee, but the weight felt different now, less like affection and more like ownership. "That kid is playing mind games with you. He's young, attractive, living in your house. You really think his interest in exposing supposed lies is purely altruistic?" The suggestion hung in the air between us, a poisonous mist designed to cloud my judgment. I watched a family of cardinals settling into the oak tree at the edge of my yard, their red feathers blazing against the darkening sky. "Why would Liam lie?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, measuring James's reaction from the corner of my eye. His fingers tightened imperceptibly on my knee. "Because he wants what I have," James replied, his tone dropping to an intimate whisper. "He sees a beautiful woman, vulnerable after a divorce, and thinks he can play the hero. Classic white knight syndrome. Move in, gain your trust, then create doubt about the actual competition. It's transparent, really." The words were reasonable, logical even, but something in their careful construction set off warning bells in my mind. I'd heard this before, this masterful redirection, this subtle gaslighting that made me question my own instincts. My ex-husband had been an expert at it, wielding doubt like a weapon until I could no longer trust my own perception of reality. Inside the house, I heard Liam laughing with Marcus, the sound drifting through the screen door like a counterpoint to James's manipulations. Over the past week, Liam had maintained a respectful distance while somehow remaining a steady presence in our daily routine. He never pushed his version of events, never tried to corner me for private conversations. Instead, he simply existed in our space with quiet conviction, his actions speaking louder than any accusations. "Move in with me," James said suddenly, turning to face me fully. "You and the kids. My place is bigger, in a better school district. You wouldn't need a tenant anymore." His eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I glimpsed something beneath the polished surface, a flicker of desperation, perhaps. Or calculation. The offer should have thrilled me. 2 months ago, it would have. But now it felt like what it was, an attempt to control the narrative, to remove variables he couldn't manage. The kids are settled here, I said carefully. And the rental income helps with the mortgage. I could help with that, he pressed, his thumb tracing circles on my knee. You wouldn't need to worry about money anymore, Anna. I could take care of everything. The words sent a chill down my spine despite the warm evening air. Take care of everything, just like my ex-husband had promised, right before he gambled away our savings and left me drowning in debt. The Cardinal family took flight from their perch, a flash of red against the purple dusk, and I felt an inexplicable kinship with their departure. Later that night, after James had left with a lingering kiss and promises to discuss our future tomorrow, I found myself in the kitchen, mindlessly wiping already clean counters. Liam appeared in the doorway, his presence announcing itself like a shift in atmospheric pressure. The kids are asleep, he said quietly, leaning against the frame. I heard them say James is taking them to Six Flags this weekend. I paused mid-wipe, the dish towel frozen in my hand. He mentioned wanting to spend more time with them, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. Being more involved in their lives. Interesting timing, Liam observed, his tone careful but pointed. Especially since Rachel mentioned on her Instagram that she's attending a design conference in Boston this weekend. Post went up about an hour ago. The dish towel slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. You're following Rachel on Instagram? Started following her the day I saw them together, he admitted, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Thought it might be useful. There's more, Anna. Things I haven't told you because I wanted you to see the truth for yourself. But if he's involving the kids now. I held up my hand, stopping him. My heart was pounding, but my mind was surprisingly clear. Not tonight, I said firmly. Tomorrow. After the kids leave for school. Tell me everything then. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. As he turned to leave, he paused. You're stronger than you think, Anna. Stronger than they know. I waited until his footsteps faded upstairs before allowing myself to sink into a kitchen chair. The house settled around me, creaking and sighing like a living thing. In the quiet, I could feel something shifting within me, not the paralyzing doubt of recent days, but something harder, sharper. A crystallization of purpose. James wanted to take the kids to Six Flags. Rachel would be in Boston. And I would finally discover what truth lay beneath the surface of all these carefully constructed lies. The game was indeed changing, but not in the way James had planned. Because this time, I wasn't just playing, I was setting the board. Morning light crept across my bedroom floor like a confession, slow and inevitable. I hadn't slept, my mind a labyrinth of possibilities, each path leading to its own particular heartbreak. The house breathed around me, the familiar creaks and settling sounds now carrying whispers of secrets about to break surface. I traced the empty space beside me where James should have been, where he would have been if I'd accepted his increasingly urgent invitations to spend the night. But something held me back, not just suspicion now, but a deeper instinct, primitive and protective, like an animal sensing a storm long before the clouds gather. The kids' voices drifted up from the kitchen, mingled with the sound of Liam preparing breakfast, a routine that had emerged so naturally, I hadn't noticed its significance until James pointed it out. Until he tried to make it seem sinister. I pressed my palms against my eyes, fighting the hurricane of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Today was the day for truth, but I wasn't sure I was ready for its weight. When I finally made my way downstairs, Sophie and Marcus were already waiting by the door, backpacks in hand. Liam stood nearby, car keys dangling from his fingers, another routine he'd slipped into, driving them to school on his way to campus. The domestic tableau hit me with unexpected force. Mom, Can we get ice cream with James after Six Flags? Sophie's innocent question landed like a punch to the gut. I forced a smile, smoothing her hair. We'll see, sweetheart. Have a good day at school. I watched them pile into Liam's car, the morning sun turning Sophie's blonde hair to spun gold, so like mine at her age. Like the woman I'd glimpsed in James's phone background yesterday when he thought I wasn't looking, a flash of golden hair and a smile I didn't recognize before he quickly switched screens. The house fell silent after they left, a silence that rang with anticipation. I moved through my morning routine like an automaton, shower, coffee, email checks, mundane actions that felt surreal against the backdrop of impending revelations. When Liam returned, I was sitting at the kitchen island, staring into my third cup of coffee as if it held answers. I found something, he said without preamble, placing a thick manila envelope on the counter between us. And you're not going to like it. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the envelope. Inside were printouts, credit card statements, restaurant receipts, hotel bookings. A pattern emerged, dates and times creating a constellation of deception. But it was the photographs that stopped my breath, James and Rachel, caught in countless moments of intimate familiarity. Coffee shops, restaurant corners, hotel lobbies. In one, his hand rested on the small of her back, proprietary and familiar, exactly the way he touched me. These are from the past 3 months, Liam said quietly. Since before he met you. The revelation didn't surprise me as much as it should have. Perhaps some part of me had already known, had recognized the practiced ease with which James navigated between lives. What cut deeper was the final photograph, James and Rachel at a jewelry store, her hand extended as he slipped something onto her finger. The timestamp was from 2 days ago. There's more, Liam continued, his voice gentle but firm. The design conference in Boston? It's not real. They have reservations at a resort in the Bahamas. 2 tickets, leaving tomorrow night. The world tilted sideways, reality shearing away from what I'd believed to be true. But beneath the vertigo, something else stirred, a cold, clear anger that felt almost like relief. The Six Flags trip was never about spending time with the kids, was it? No. I think he needed an alibi. Something you wouldn't question. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound like tearing metal. Moving to the window, I watched a neighbor walking her dog, the mundane scene a stark contrast to the chaos erupting within my walls. Why did you do all this, Liam? Why go to such lengths to expose him? The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. When he finally answered, his voice was raw with emotion I hadn't allowed myself to recognize before. Because I watch you rebuild yourself every day. Because you deserve someone who sees your strength, not your vulnerability. Because he stopped, and I turned to face him, caught by the intensity in his eyes. Because I care about you, Anna. More than I should. The confession hung in the air between us, charged with possibility and danger. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed, a text from James. Can't wait for tomorrow. The kids will love it. And after, maybe we can talk about our future. I looked down at the phone, then at the scattered evidence of his betrayal across my counter. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, surprising in its bitterness. Our future, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. He's planning a future with both of us. Anna. Liam took a step toward me, concern etched on his features. I held up a hand, stopping him. No. Don't comfort me. I don't need comfort. My voice was steady, surprising me with its strength. What I need is a plan. The scattered photos seemed to mock me, each one a snapshot of carefully orchestrated deception. But as I gathered them up, something crystallized in my mind, clear and sharp as diamond. James thought he was orchestrating a perfect exit, using my children as unwitting props in his performance. He thought he had all the power, all the control. I caught my reflection in the window, a woman transformed by revelation, steel replacing uncertainty in her spine. "Tell me everything you know about their travel plans," I said, turning back to Liam. "Every detail, every reservation. If James wants to play games with my children's hearts, he's about to learn exactly who he's dealing with." Liam's eyes widened slightly at whatever he saw in my face, but he nodded, reaching for his laptop. As he began pulling up details, I felt the last vestiges of my former self, the trusting, vulnerable woman who accepted pretty lies, falling away like autumn leaves. In their place, something new emerged, something forged in the fire of repeated betrayal and tempered by the promise of justice. Tomorrow, James would learn that some games have consequences he never anticipated. And I would finally show my children what real strength looks like. Revenge, I discovered, tastes like copper and honey, metallic with determination, sweet with anticipation. As I meticulously arranged the evidence of James's duplicity across my dining room table, each piece felt like a weapon being sharpened against the whetstone of my rage. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the damning collection, hotel confirmations, time-stamped photographs, credit card statements that told a story of calculated betrayal. My hands moved with surgical precision, organizing everything chronologically. The timeline emerged like a cancer diagnosis, insidious, spreading, deadly to everything I'd believed about my relationship. 3 months of parallel lives. 3 months of James crafting the perfect exit strategy, using my children as unwitting pawns in his elaborate chess game. "The flight to Nassau leaves at 8 p.m. tomorrow," Liam said from his position by the window, his voice careful, measured. "First class." He booked it under his company's travel account. I traced my finger along the edge of a photograph, James and Rachel leaving a boutique hotel, her hand tucked into the crook of his elbow. The same way he'd led me into that French restaurant last week, where he'd spoken about our future with such convincing sincerity. The memory curdled in my stomach. "You know what fascinates me?" I spoke softly, dangerously. "Not the affair itself. That's practically pedestrian in its predictability. It's the architecture of his deception, how he built this elaborate facade, using my past trauma as the foundation. He knew exactly how to position himself as the antidote to my ex-husband's betrayal. Every move was calculated, wasn't it?" Liam shifted, his reflection in the window a study in contained tension. "He's been planning this for weeks. The Six Flags trip, the talks about moving in together, it was all designed to establish his commitment to you and the kids. Make his eventual disappearance more shocking, more devastating." A laugh escaped me, sharp as broken glass. He wanted to recreate my first husband's abandonment. Probably thought it would break me completely this time. I stood, moving to the kitchen where I'd left my phone. James's latest message glowed on the screen, packed some surprises for the kids tomorrow. "You're going to love what I have planned." The irony was exquisite enough to taste. "What are you going to do?" Liam's question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken possibilities. I turned to face him, really seeing him for the first time since this morning's revelations. The concern in his eyes was genuine, untainted by the manipulation I now recognized in every interaction with James. But there was something else there too, a warmth that threatened to complicate everything. "Tell me something, Liam," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake of emotions beneath my surface. "When did you really start investigating James? Don't tell me it was just after you saw them together that day. This is too thorough, too detailed for a few weeks' work." He held my gaze, unflinching. "I noticed things about him from the beginning. Small inconsistencies, careful calculations in how he approached you and the kids. He reminded me of someone, my sister's ex-husband. Same playbook, different stage." His jaw tightened. "I started looking into him the day I heard him on the phone in his car, practicing conversations he was planning to have with you. Word for word, like an actor rehearsing lines. The confession should have angered me, this invasion of privacy, this presumption. Instead, I felt a surge of something dangerously close to gratitude. And your interest in my friend Claire? Was that part of your investigation too? Color touched his cheeks, but he didn't look away. That was unexpected. She's been helping me gather information, yes. But it's become more than that. Understanding dawned like sunrise after a storm. You and Claire, you're seeing each other. For the past few weeks, he admitted. I wasn't sure how to tell you, given everything else happening. I didn't want you to think that you were manipulating me too. The pieces clicked into place with satisfying finality. That's why you never pushed harder about James, why you kept your distance even when you knew what he was doing. You weren't trying to play hero. You were trying to protect your girlfriend's friend. Relief flooded his features. Claire cares about you, Anna. When I told her what I discovered about James, she was the one who helped me get the credit card statements, the hotel records. She's been worried sick about you, but we agreed you needed to see the truth for yourself. I closed my eyes, processing this new reality. When I opened them again, my path forward was crystalline in its clarity. I need your help, both of you. But not to expose James. Not yet. I moved back to the dining room table, picking up the Bahamas reservation confirmation. He thinks he's orchestrating the perfect exit, using my children as shields against suspicion. I think it's time we rewrote his ending. Liam's expression shifted from concern to intrigue. What do you have in mind? I smiled, and in my reflection in the window, I saw something predatory in the expression. First, we're going to let him believe everything's going exactly according to his plan. Then, tomorrow at 6 Flags. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to Rachel's Instagram profile that Liam had shown me earlier. We're going to give him a preview of what betrayal really feels like. As I outlined my strategy, watching Liam's eyes widen with each detail, I felt the last vestiges of my victimhood falling away. James had cast me in the role of vulnerable single mother, ripe for manipulation. He never suspected he was actually dealing with an architect of a different kind, one who specialized in dismantling carefully constructed lies. Tomorrow would be a masterclass in consequences. And James? James would learn that some roles aren't as easy to escape as a first-class flight to paradise. 6 Flags loomed before us like a temple of manufactured joy, its roller coasters scraping against the morning sky in twisted prayers. The air was thick with the scent of cotton candy in anticipation, screams of delight echoing across the parking lot as James helped the children out of his Mercedes. I watched him perform the role of devoted almost stepfather with Oscar-worthy precision, his hand gentle on Sophie's shoulder, his smile encouraging as Marcus bounced with excitement. The weight of the envelope in my purse felt like a loaded gun against my side. Timing would be everything, a lesson James himself had taught me through months of calculated manipulation. I caught his eye across the hood of his car, noting how his confident smile faltered slightly at whatever he saw in my expression. "Everything okay, babe?" he called out, his voice carrying that practiced note of concern that I now recognized as artificial as the cheerful music drifting from the park's entrance. "Perfect," I replied, and for the first time in months, I wasn't lying. Just perfect. The morning unfolded according to James's carefully orchestrated schedule. He played the part of the perfect father figure, buying overpriced snacks, waiting patiently in lines, celebrating each small victory as the kids conquered progressively more challenging rides. I allowed myself to fade into the background, watching him weave what he thought would be the final threads of his deception. At precisely 1:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. I knew without looking that it would be Rachel, right on schedule, her message crafted to create the excuse he needed to begin his exit strategy. I saw the subtle shift in his posture as he read it, the microscopic tightening around his eyes that telegraphed his growing anticipation. "Anna," he touched my arm with practiced tenderness, "the office just called. Emergency with the Richardson project." I hate to cut this short, but dash. Of course, I interrupted smoothly, my voice honey-sweet with understanding. The kids and I can take an Uber home. You've already given us such a wonderful day. Relief flooded his features, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in weeks. He bent to kiss me, and I allowed it, tasting the lies on his lips one final time. As he knelt to hug the children goodbye, I saw the future he thought he was crafting, their tears tomorrow when they realized he was gone, their trust in male figures forever poisoned by another abandonment, my world shattered anew by calculated betrayal. Not this time. James, I called as he turned to leave. You forgot something. He paused, confusion flickering across his handsome features. Reaching into my purse, I withdrew the envelope, watching understanding dawn in his eyes like a spreading stain. The Bahamas are lovely this time of year, I said conversationally, loud enough for nearby families to hear. Though I imagine the resort might be less accommodating when they realize you've booked the same honeymoon suite under two different names. Color drained from his face. Behind him, right on cue, Rachel appeared, her golden hair catching the sunlight, her designer sundress a splash of expensive color against the crowd. Claire had done her part perfectly, ensuring my rival would arrive at exactly this moment, armed with her own set of revelations about the man we'd both foolishly trusted. Rachel, darling, I called out, my voice carrying across the diminishing space between us. I believe you've met my children. The ones James promised to help raise while he was promising you an exclusive commitment. The scene that unfolded was better than any roller coaster the park could offer. Rachel's face contorted with shock and fury as she recognized the children from James's carefully curated stories, where he'd cast himself as their concerned uncle, not their mother's live-in boyfriend. James stood frozen between us, his perfectly constructed house of lies collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. Mom. Marcus's voice cut through the tension. What's happening? I knelt before my children, seeing in their confused faces the same vulnerability James had planned to exploit. What's happening is that we're learning a very important lesson about truth, I said firmly. And about being strong enough to stand up for ourselves when someone tries to hurt us. You vindictive bitch, James snarled, his charming mask finally cracking completely. You had no right dash. To what? Protect my children from another trauma? Expose your pathological manipulation. I rose to my full height, power flowing through me like electricity. Or perhaps you mean I had no right to contact your other fiancé in Boston? The one who's currently speaking with your board of directors about your creative approach to company travel expenses? He staggered back as if physically struck, his face ashen. Rachel's expression had transformed from anger to horror as she realized the depth of his deceptions. Around us, a crowd had gathered, drawn by the unfolding drama, their phones raised like mirrors reflecting James's true face back at him. The thing about architects, James, I continued, my voice steady and clear, is that we understand structure. How to build things, yes, but also how to dismantle them. You built this elaborate fantasy, thinking you were the master designer. But you never realized you were actually creating the blueprint for your own downfall. The children pressed against my sides, not with fear but with growing understanding. I felt Sophie's small hand slip into mine, squeezing with unconditional trust that made my heart swell. Let's go home, kids, I said, turning away from the wreckage of James's schemes. I think we've had enough excitement for one day. As we walked toward the park exit, I heard Rachel's voice rise in righteous fury behind us, followed by the sound of James's increasingly desperate attempts to explain. But those sounds faded into insignificance, replaced by the steady rhythm of our footsteps moving forward, together. Liam was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car with quiet confidence. The sight of him triggered no butterflies, no complicated emotions, just profound gratitude for someone who had chosen truth over convenience, protection over exploitation. Ready to go? He asked simply. I looked at my children, their faces tilted up toward mine with renewed trust and admiration. Then back at the park, where James's world was imploding with the force of his own deceptions. Yes, I replied, feeling the last weights of vulnerability falling away. We're ready for whatever comes next. The drive home was filled with questions, explanations, and moments of quiet processing. But beneath it all ran a current of fierce joy, not from the revenge itself, but from the knowledge that I had finally become the protector my children deserved. The woman who would show them that love doesn't mean accepting betrayal, that strength sometimes means walking away, and that the most important relationships we build are the ones founded on absolute truth. As we pulled into our driveway, the setting sun painted our house in shades of possibility. Inside, dinner would need to be made, homework checked, routines maintained. Life would go on, but with a crucial difference: we were no longer living in a house built on someone else's lies. We were home, in every sense that mattered, and the foundation beneath us was unshakable.